What if I told you that magnetism has nothing to do with how loud you speak, how perfectly symmetrical your face is, or how much attention you can steal in a crowded room? Real magnetism, the kind that lingers, the kind that haunts people's thoughts long after you've left the room, is born in the quiet mastery of self. Welcome to the Everlasting Stoic. This is not a channel for cheap tricks or shallow tactics. Here we dig deep into the timeless wisdom of Stoicism, into the psychology of human connection, and into the practices that forge real, lasting power. In this video, we'll walk through 10 traits that make you magnetic to others, not in a way that manipulates, but in a way that commands respect, admiration, and trust. These traits aren't quick fixes. They are habits of the inner world sculpted over time through intention, awareness, and discipline. If you're someone who's ready to step into a presence that speaks volumes without noise, stay until the very end. I promise this won't just make you more attractive to others. It will make you more aligned with yourself. And if you haven't already, I invite you to subscribe and hit the like button. Not for me, for you, so that your feed becomes a place of calm strength, not chaos, a place of thoughtfulness, not noise. Let's begin. 1. Command attention without force. In a world obsessed with volume, there is something unnervingly powerful about the individual who doesn't need to shout. Commanding attention is not about taking up more space than others. It's about being so rooted in yourself that others feel pulled into your gravity without knowing why. This trait begins with silence, but not passive silence. It's the silence of a mind that is watching, processing, weighing, the silence of a soul that does not feel the need to perform. Stoicism teaches us that external validation is a trap. If you walk into a room hoping to be liked, hoping to impress, you've already given your power away. The magnetic individual enters that same room not to be liked, but to observe, to understand, to stand still in their values like a marble statue among flickering flames. Think about it. Who draws more attention? The one who begs for it, or the one who clearly doesn't need it? You command attention when your movements are deliberate, your speech measured, and your energy calm. You become magnetic when your actions say, "I am whole," with or without your applause. This doesn't mean you need to become cold or aloof. Presence does not mean distance. It means you are fully here, but you are not chasing. You are not proving. You are not leaking energy, trying to be perceived in a certain way. People gravitate toward those who radiate containment, who seem like they are in full possession of their own inner world. This is rare. Most people are scattered, reactive, easily swayed. But the one who has cultivated stillness, that one becomes unforgettable. You can start cultivating this today. First, slow everything down. When you speak, give your words time to land. When you walk, move with the grace of someone who has nowhere to prove, nothing to chase. When you listen, listen like the world is revealing its secrets in every pause. Second, practice detachment from outcome. Whether you're giving a presentation or sitting at a dinner table, the moment you need others to react a certain way, you lose your footing. Instead, stay with your intention. Deliver what you came to offer and let the ripples fall where they may. And third, get comfortable with silence. It unnerves the insecure. It reveals the noise in others. But for you, it becomes a sanctuary, a canvas on which presence paints its masterpiece. Ask yourself, do I seek attention or do I hold presence? If this resonates with you, take a moment now to anchor it. In the comments, write this affirmation if you're ready to embody this magnetic stillness. I do not chase attention. I radiate presence. Let that be your commitment to your evolution. 2. Let values guide every action. There is nothing more magnetic than a person whose life is tethered to something deeper than approval, pleasure, or convenience. In a culture dominated by trend chasing and momentary gratification, the person of values is an anomaly and a beacon. Values are not slogans you wear on your sleeve. They are invisible architecture. They are the lines you will not cross. The principles that guide you when no one is watching. They are what gives your decisions weight and your character depth. Think about the people you truly admire, fictional or real, whether it's a warrior, a mentor, a philosopher, or even a friend. What draws you to them isn't perfection. It's integrity. They may stumble, they may doubt, but they do not betray the principles that define them. Stoicism has long held that virtue is the highest good. Not comfort, not wealth, not recognition. Virtue, that's what makes a person magnetic when others can feel, intuitively, that this is someone who has a code. A compass that doesn't spin with the winds of opinion. Here's the paradox. When you stand for something deeply, you become both polarizing and deeply attractive. You will repel those who live unconsciously, but you will also draw in those who are starving for authenticity, for depth, for truth. So how do you embody this trait? First, identify your core values. Not the ones you like to associate with, but the ones you're willing to suffer for. Is it honesty, courage, loyalty, self-discipline, humility? Decide now what you refuse to compromise on, even if it costs you popularity, comfort, or acceptance. Second, live them out consistently. Let your values dictate how you respond to a cruel comment online. Let them decide how you treat someone who cannot benefit you. Let them determine how you act when no one will find out. Third, communicate your values not through words but actions. Speak with restraint. Keep your promises. Set boundaries not as threats, but as acts of clarity. When you do this over time, people will begin to recognize something rare in you. Even if they can't name it, they'll feel that you are stable, unshakable, and in a world of flux, that is irresistible. There is a kind of silent charisma that radiates from someone who is clearly guided by something sacred. They don't need to convince you. They simply live it, and that alignment becomes a gravitational field. This doesn't mean you must be perfect. You will fail. You will betray your own values sometimes. But what matters is that you notice it, take accountability, and return. That return, that continual recommitment, is itself a sign of your strength. Let me ask you something. What are the values that matter most to you, and when was the last time you sacrificed for them? Take a moment now. Reflect. Then in the comments, name one value you refuse to abandon, no matter what the cost. Let it be your line in the sand. Let it be your signal to others who live with the same fire. 3. Read between the lines. If you want to be magnetic in a world that is increasingly distracted and performative, there is one rare ability you must cultivate. The ability to see what is not said, to hear what is not spoken, to observe not just the behavior, but the tension behind it. That ability is to read between the lines. And it is among the most ancient, most formidable social skills known to those who hold influence without domination. Magnetism is not just about being seen. It's about making others feel seen. When you can detect the subtext of a conversation, the subtle tremor in someone's voice, the hesitation in their word choice, the way their body momentarily recoils when a topic is mentioned. You begin to operate on a different level of human connection. You begin to see beneath the mask. And the truth is, everyone wears masks. The confident speaker at the party, he may be desperately afraid of silence. The sarcastic friend, she might be shielding a long-buried grief. The man who boasts about how little he needs others, often, he's aching for closeness, but terrified of rejection. To read between the lines is to stop listening only with your ears, and to begin listening with your eyes, your intuition and your empathy sharpened by detachment. Not to judge, not to fix, but to understand. The Stoics knew this well. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that every man he met was fighting a battle he could not see, and so he approached them with patience, curiosity, and grace. He also knew not to be fooled by appearances. To train your perception is to walk through the world with a lens of deeper wisdom. Now, let's be very clear. This trait is not about mind games or psychological tricks. It is not about manipulating people by decoding their weak spots. That's the work of the shallow. No, this is about being attuned to others. Not because you want something from them, but because you honor what it means to be human. To develop this, start by observing more than you speak. People will tell you everything if you let them, but most are too eager to fill the silence, to jump in with their own stories, to prove they're paying attention. The magnetic person resists that urge. They wait, they notice, they give space. Second, learn to track micro-expressions and contradictions. Someone says they're fine, but their tone dips. They say they're not bothered, but their fists are clenched. They smile, but their eyes are empty. These inconsistencies are not always signs of deception. They are often invitations to deeper truth. Third, don't take everything at face value. This doesn't mean you become paranoid or cynical. It means you remain curious, detached enough not to be reactive, but present enough to pick up on cues others ignore. And perhaps most importantly, you must refine your own emotional self-awareness. Because your ability to perceive others is directly proportionate to how well you understand yourself. If you constantly misread your own inner state, if you ignore your own shadows, your perception of others will always be distorted. When you begin to master this trait, you'll notice something strange. People will begin telling you things they don't usually share. They'll feel safe with you, not because you fixed them, but because you noticed them. Because in your presence, they don't feel invisible. They feel understood. That is rare. That is unforgettable. That is magnetic. Take a moment to think of someone in your life who always seemed to get you, someone who could see through your words and into your truth. What made them that way? And more importantly, how can you become that person for someone else? If you're ready to develop this depth of perception, write in the comments, "I will learn to see beyond the surface." Let this be your quiet vow, not just to read people better, but to meet them where they are, with the eyes of wisdom and the heart of a Stoic. 4. Be curious, not intrusive. There's an art to interest, a subtle, elusive balance between showing genuine curiosity and crossing into territory that feels invasive or controlling. And those who master this art, they become magnetic in a way that is almost impossible to replicate, because they make others feel truly valued without making them feel interrogated. This chapter is not just about asking good questions. It's about the intentional posture of your soul. When you engage with another person, when your curiosity comes from a place of ego, it is self-serving. You want to figure them out, to gain leverage, to have something to analyze or gossip about. But when your curiosity comes from humility, it is disarming. It becomes an offering, an act of care. Let's begin with the foundational truth. Every person you meet carries within them an entire universe of experience, pain, triumph, contradiction, beauty, and chaos. Most of it has never been fully spoken aloud. Some of it may never be, but that doesn't mean they don't long for someone to care enough to wonder. Curiosity is magnetic because it makes others feel seen and worth exploring. Not as puzzles to be solved, but as human beings with layered stories, and in a world that often feels transactional. This kind of attention is rare, but there is a line, and it's thinner than you might think. If your curiosity is too aggressive, it becomes uncomfortable. If it's too clinical, it becomes objectifying. And if it's too persistent, it feels like surveillance. Intrusive curiosity is born from anxiety, not intention. It says, I need to know this to feel safe. But healthy curiosity says, you are worthy of being understood in your own time. So, how do you walk this line? First, ask questions that open doors without pushing through them. Instead of why did you do that? Try, what was going through your mind at the time? Instead of are you always like this? Try, has this always been your experience? The best questions don't pry, they invite. Second, pay attention to energy, not just words. Someone might verbally agree to share something, but their body language tells a different story. If you sense discomfort, pull back. Trust must be built, not demanded. Let your presence be one of patience, not pressure. Third, share something of yourself first. Vulnerability opens the gates of trust. When you offer a piece of your story, you signal that this is a space of mutual exploration, not a one-sided excavation. And fourth, understand that some things are not yours to know. This is perhaps the most difficult and most stoic element of all. You must be at peace with mystery. Not every question needs an answer. Not every person needs to open to you. The magnetic individual does not chase intimacy. They create the conditions for it to unfold naturally and respectfully. In relationships, romantic or otherwise, this balance is critical. Early on, people will test your boundaries just as much as you test theirs. If they feel you rushing past emotional checkpoints, they may retreat. But if they feel your curiosity is steady, respectful, and patient, they'll begin to trust you. And trust is the soil where real connection grows. At its core, Stoicism teaches us to accept what is given and release what is withheld. This applies even in conversation. You are not owed someone's story, but if they choose to share it with you, receive it like a sacred gift. People don't remember the specifics of what you ask them. They remember how you made them feel while asking. Did they feel judged? Or did they feel witnessed? Did they feel picked apart? Or did they feel held? Curiosity is a form of love, not the romantic kind, but the philosophical kind. The kind that says, your existence matters enough for me to pay attention. So, here's your invitation. Think of a moment where someone made you feel deeply seen, not by what they told you, but by what they gently asked. Then pay that gift forward. In the comments, if you're ready to shift from intrusive to intentional. Right. I will explore others with humility and care. Let that be your guide when you speak, when you listen, when you seek to know not just what someone says, but what they mean. 5. Listen like you mean it. There is perhaps no social trait more universally praised and yet more rarely practiced than listening. Everyone claims to be a good listener until it's their turn to be quiet, until they feel the itch to interrupt, to redirect the spotlight, to insert their story in the cracks of someone else's vulnerability. And yet, to truly listen like you mean it, is to offer something sacred. It is to become a still lake into which others can pour the chaotic river of their thoughts. And this is where real magnetism begins. Not in how eloquently you speak, but in how deeply others feel heard in your presence. In Stoic philosophy, we are taught that control lies not in how others perceive us, but in how we choose to act. Listening in this sense becomes a training ground for self-mastery, because to listen well requires restraint. It requires that we delay our need to be understood so that we can first seek to understand. It demands that we quiet the ego, which constantly wants to reply, correct, advise, or improve. When someone speaks to you, they are not merely relaying information. They are revealing where they're at in that very moment. Their words are only the tip of the iceberg. Their pauses, their tone, the rhythm of their breath. These are the real messages, the ones most people miss. A magnetic person doesn't just hear, they receive. And more than that, they respond in a way that proves they were fully present. Let's break down what this really looks like. First, you listen with your body before your mouth ever opens. You lean in, not physically necessarily, but energetically. You look them in the eyes, not staring, but steady. You don't check your phone mid-conversation. You don't scan the room for someone more interesting. You are here, fully. Second, you reflect, not redirect. When someone tells you something vulnerable, the weak impulse is to hijack the moment with a similar story. Oh yeah, that happened to me too. But the strong impulse, the Stoic one, is to stay with their moment. That sounds difficult. How long have you felt that way? Or what helped you get through it? These are the questions that deepen the trust. These are the questions that change the trajectory of relationship. Third, you hold space without rushing to resolve. Too often we mistake advice for empathy. We think we're helping by fixing, but most people don't need your solutions. They need your presence. They need a witness to their inner world. Someone who doesn't flinch when the truth gets messy. Someone who hauls, I hear you. Not, let me fix you. This kind of listening isn't easy. It's a discipline. It takes repetition. You will fail at it often, especially when emotions run high or when the other person's pain triggers your own unresolved patterns. But the Stoic listens not just to comfort others, but to grow stronger themselves. Because every act of real listening is an act of patience, of ego death, of self-regulation. And here's the paradox. The more intently you listen to others, the more they begin to feel drawn to you. You become the rare person they can be themselves around. And that comfort, that freedom, that is magnetic in a way that no charm, no wit, no physical trait can replicate. There is a calm, commanding power in the person who listens not to reply but to absorb, not to defend but to understand, not to dominate the space, but to expand it. So ask yourself honestly, when was the last time someone felt truly heard by you? Not tolerated, not placated, but heard. If you're ready to transform your relationships, your presence, and your very character by becoming a masterful listener, I invite you to reflect now. In the comments, write this affirmation. If you're committed, I will become the person others feel safe to open up to. Write it, and let it be your vow, not just to hear more clearly, but to live more fully. 6. Let time work for you. In a society addicted to speed, urgency, and instant gratification, the one who understands the power of time becomes a different species entirely. not because they can control time, but because they've learned to move with it, not against it. They know when to act, when to wait, when to strike, and when to let things unfold in silence. Magnetism, in its truest form, is timeless. And the individual who knows how to let time work for them, instead of anxiously working against time, that person holds a kind of gravitational calm that others instinctively respect, even if they don't know why. Let's start with one of the most important truths of all. Everything worthwhile takes time. Stoicism teaches us to release attachment to outcomes and instead focus on what we can control. Our choices, our responses, our values. But what lies beneath that philosophy is the implicit understanding that timing is not always ours to dictate. You don't become disciplined overnight. You don't earn respect in a week. You don't earn respect in a week. You don't cultivate magnetic presence by rushing to become liked. You become magnetic by learning how to move through seasons with patience, with trust, and with clarity. So what does it mean to let time work for you? First, it means you understand that urgency is often a trap. When you rush into decisions, into relationships, into reactions, you lose your center. You give your power away. The magnetic person cultivates the discipline of delay. They do not act out of desperation, even when they feel pressure. They breathe. They think. They let the moment pass through them before they respond. Second, it means you don't force connections. In relationships, whether romantic, professional, or platonic, true resonance cannot be forced. The insecure seek to accelerate connection. They push, they demand clarity too soon. They try to label something that is still forming. But the grounded individual lets time reveal what words cannot. They let trust unfold organically. They know that anything rushed loses its shape. Third, to let time work for you is to become unbothered by delays. Whether you're pursuing mastery in your craft, building a relationship, or healing from something that fractured you, you must understand, time is not your enemy. It is your teacher, and often, when something is being delayed, it is not being denied, it is being refined. But this doesn't mean passivity. Stoicism is not surrendering into laziness. It is the opposite. It is active patience. It is living with clarity and doing your part every day, while surrendering your addiction to immediate results. The magnetic individual understands rhythm. They don't overplay their hand. They don't reveal everything at once. They don't speak just to fill silence. They let mystery live in the space between moments. And because of this, they become more compelling, more trusted, more stable. There's a calm that comes with this trait. A man or woman who has become friends with time walks differently, speaks differently. They aren't constantly looking at their watch, or checking their phone, or chasing the next dopamine hit. They know that what is for them will come if they are ready, and if they endure. And so they prepare, they refine, they invest in the long term. They play the infinite game. Let this be your reminder. You don't have to rush. You don't have to force. You don't have to prove. You only have to align yourself with what matters most and give it time to grow. Growth is not loud. Trust is not rushed. Mastery is not microwaved. It is carved. Day by day, decision by decision, breath by breath. So I ask you now, as you reflect on this truth, where in your life have you been forcing the clock instead of letting time work for you? Write it down. Think deeply. And if you feel the pull, share your answer in the comments. Or simply affirm, I will move with time, not against it. Let that be your mantra. When you feel the urge to rush, let it slow your breath, deepen your focus, and bring you back to the grounded patience of the ever-evolving Stoic. 7. Understand. Don't overanalyze. Tough. One of the greatest traps for intelligent, introspective people is the belief that more thinking equals more clarity. But as the Stoics knew, that's not always true. In fact, overthinking often muddies the waters of understanding. It creates illusions of insight, where all we're really doing is spinning in circles. If you want to be magnetic to others, not in a manipulative way, but in a truly grounded, stable, and quietly captivating way, then you must learn the rare art of understanding, without overanalyzing, of seeing clearly, without dissecting everything into oblivion. Because overanalysis is not clarity. It's control wearing the mask of curiosity. Let's explore this in depth. To understand someone, to really understand them, is to hold space for their truth, without reducing them to a set of conclusions. You don't need to label them. You don't need to figure them out like a math problem. You need to witness them, who they are right now, not just who they were or who they might become. And this applies to yourself too. Too many people mistake overanalysis for growth. They comb through every detail of past conversations. They obsess over every facial expression. They create elaborate theories about what every silence, every pause, every text means. And in doing so, they lose the moment. They miss the simplicity of connection. They distort what could have been real with a fog of imagined complexity. Magnetism comes from presence, and presence cannot coexist with obsessive mental noise. Now, to be clear, understanding is a virtue. Seeking to know someone's motives, to appreciate their complexity, to learn from experience, these are signs of depth. But overanalyzing is something else entirely. It's rooted in fear. It's driven by the need to control outcomes, avoid pain, or preempt disappointment. The Stoic approach is different. It says, observe, reflect, but then act or release. Don't sit in endless rumination. Don't chew the same thought until it turns bitter. Understand what's useful, then move forward with strength. So how do you strike this balance, especially in relationships? First, check your intent. Ask yourself, am I analyzing this because I'm genuinely seeking clarity, or because I'm afraid of uncertainty? That self-awareness changes everything. Second, train your tolerance for ambiguity. Life is not a puzzle to be solved. It is a rhythm to be moved with. You won't always know what someone means. You won't always be able to predict the future. But if you can sit with the unknown without panic, you radiate something rare. Trust in yourself and in the unfolding of events. Third, know when to ask questions and when to let go. Some truths need to emerge in their own time. If you pry too soon, you distort them. But if you remain patient and perceptive, truth reveals itself naturally, through pattern, through tone, through consistent action. In love, this is vital. Overanalyzing kills intimacy. It chokes the joy out of spontaneity. It replaces curiosity with suspicion. And eventually, it becomes exhausting for both you and the other person. But when you understand someone without needing to pin them down, when you allow them the dignity of their contradictions, you offer a space few people ever get to experience. And that space becomes magnetic. It draws people toward you, because they feel free and seen. Now reflect on this. Where in your life have you been confusing understanding with control? Where have you analyzed someone or yourself into paralysis? If you're ready to trade obsessive thought for peaceful awareness, Affirm this in the comments. I release the need to overanalyze. I choose presence, not control. Let that be your daily reset. A way of returning to clarity, not through thought loops, but through calm, grounded seeing. 8. Reflect emotional intelligence. True emotional intelligence isn't about being nice. It's not about being agreeable, or always knowing the right thing to say, or avoiding conflict. No, emotional intelligence is about mastery over your inner world, so you can move through the outer world with clarity and power. And if you want to be magnetic not in a fleeting, performative way, but in a soul-deep, stoic way, you must reflect emotional intelligence in how you speak, how you listen, how you respond, how you lead. Let's begin with what emotional intelligence actually is. At its root, it's the ability to recognize, understand, and regulate emotions, your own and others. But beyond recognition, it's about response. It's about developing a moment-to-moment awareness of how your emotional state is shaping your perceptions, and how others are revealing theirs, sometimes through anger, sometimes through withdrawal, sometimes through sarcasm or silence. In relationships, this trait is everything. And I do mean everything. Why? Because people aren't drawn to those who never feel anything. They're drawn to those who can feel deeply, but remain grounded. The person who can sit with pain without panicking. The one who can navigate conflict without needing to win. The one who can feel desire, grief, love, jealousy, or doubt without being hijacked by those emotions. That's what Stoicism is all about. It doesn't tell you to repress. It tells you to rule. And emotional intelligence is how you rule your inner kingdom. Let's go deeper. To reflect emotional intelligence is to recognize when you're triggered and choose not to lash out. Sense the energy shift in a conversation and adjust with grace. Validate another's experience without losing your own boundaries. Know when to speak and when silence says more. Offer empathy without collapsing into codependency. Assert truth without using it as a weapon. This is not softness. This is strength under control. Now, one of the most magnetic things a person can do is remain emotionally composed when everyone else is spiraling. In conflict, for example, most people escalate. They match tone for tone, insult for insult. But the emotionally intelligent person does something different. They de-escalate, not by retreating, but by staying anchored. Calm voice, open body language, clear eyes. No cheap shots, no power games, just presence. People don't forget that kind of energy. But to embody it, you must first practice it privately. The greatest mistake is thinking emotional intelligence only matters during conversations. The truth is, it begins in solitude. In how you talk to yourself, in how you manage your stress, in how you sit with discomfort instead of running from it or numbing it. So ask yourself, do you recognize your emotional triggers? Do you know how to soothe yourself without external validation? Do you process anger or sadness in ways that are constructive, or do you suppress and explode? The Stoics believed that mastering the self was the greatest battlefield of all. And this battlefield is internal. How you choose your tone, your thoughts, your reactions, your timing. And what's more magnetic than that? Someone who can walk through storms and still be kind. Someone who can disagree without disrespect. Someone who can feel deeply, but choose wisely. That person becomes a stabilizing force. And in an unstable world, people cling to stability like a lifeline. So if you're ready to become the person who reflects emotional intelligence, not just in moments of ease, but in moments of tension, take a moment now and ground your commitment. In the comments if this chapter resonated, right? I will feel deeply. I will choose wisely. Let that be your vow, not to suppress your emotional life, but to refine it, so that your presence becomes something others trust, not just admire. 9. Enjoy your own company. There's a certain energy you can't fake, a kind of presence that doesn't clamor for attention, doesn't need to be entertained, doesn't fear being alone. And that energy, it comes from someone who genuinely genius their own company. In a world driven by external stimulation, constant updates, endless messaging, background noise, social validation on demand, most people are terrified of solitude, not just being physically alone, but being alone with themselves. And that's the tragedy, because your relationship with yourself is the foundation of all other relationships. If you can't sit with your own mind, your own silence, your own thoughts without distraction, how can you offer presence to someone else? This chapter is about the quiet magnetism of self-containment. The kind of magnetism that doesn't scream, "Look at me," but whispers, "I'm whole." The man or woman who enjoys their own company becomes untouchable in a way that few ever achieve, because they are no longer bargaining with loneliness. They've made peace with themselves, and people feel that. The Stoics were masters of solitude. Marcus Aurelius wrote Meditations alone, in the quiet before battle, or in the dead of night between duties. Epictetus, born a slave, trained his mind in solitude long before he ever taught others. Seneca spoke often of retreat, not to escape society, but to become fortified within. To enjoy your own company doesn't mean you isolate. It means your aloneness is no longer a problem that needs solving. It becomes a space where you can think, recalibrate, reflect. It becomes your home, not your exile. And the impact of this, immense. When you walk into a room full of people who need others to validate their worth, your centeredness stands out. You don't chase conversation, but when you speak, you do so with calm assurance. You don't seek approval, yet people seek yours because you radiate something rare: freedom from social addiction. Here's the test. How do you feel when no one is calling, no one is texting, no one is watching? Are you restless? Do you immediately reach for your phone, scroll, stimulate, distract? Or can you sit in the quiet and actually feel alive there? Most people treat alone time as a punishment, but you must learn to treat it as a gift, as your training ground, as your sacred temple of refinement. How? Start small. Take a daily walk alone, without a podcast, without a phone call, just you and your thoughts. Journal. Not performatively, not for anyone to read, just as a way to track the weather of your inner world. Read, not for social status, but to feed your mind with the thoughts of the greats. And most of all, confront the discomfort. Let the silence get awkward. Let the old wounds rise to the surface. Don't numb them. Sit with them. Because every time you resist the urge to distract, you gain a little more power. You strengthen the relationship with yourself. Eventually, you'll find something surprising. The solitude you once feared becomes the place you miss when the world gets loud. It becomes your anchor, and people will sense it. They won't be able to name it, but they'll feel safer around you, because you're not grasping. You're not performing. You're just solid. This is the paradox. The more at home you are with yourself, the more others want to be around you, because you offer a rare experience. The experience of someone who doesn't need anything from them, yet fully welcomes them. So reflect now. Do you enjoy your own company, or do you merely tolerate it? If you're ready to deepen that relationship, Write this in the comments. I will become my own sanctuary. Let it be your inner vow to become the kind of person whose solitude feels like peace, not punishment. 10. Respond, don't react. 10. If there is one trait that separates the magnetic from the forgettable, the respected from the impulsive, the stoic from the scattered, it's this: the ability to respond, not react. In today's world, people are constantly triggered, constantly flinching at the slightest offense, lashing out in comment sections, cutting off relationships over misunderstandings, living on emotional autopilot. And in that chaos, the individual who can pause, who can think before they speak, feel before they act, reflect before they judge, becomes rare, powerful, and deeply attractive. To respond is to choose. To react is to surrender. When you react, you hand your inner world over to whatever stimulus is loudest. But when you respond, you remain sovereign. You slow the process. You create space. And in that space, you reclaim your power. The Stoics spoke endlessly about this space. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." This principle applies to every area of life, especially relationships. Someone criticizes you? Do you immediately defend, attack, deflect? Or do you listen, filter, and respond with calm self-possession? Your partner says something that triggers an old wound? Do you shut down or explode? Or do you breathe, pause, and respond in a way that builds trust instead of damaging it? Even in everyday moments, traffic, tech glitches, a delayed text, the reactive person bleeds energy all day. But the responsive person, they preserve energy. They choose clarity over chaos, wisdom over speed, stillness over drama. So how do you cultivate this? First, train your awareness of sensation. Before every reaction, there is a physiological cue. Tight chest, clenched jaw, racing heart. Learn to notice it. Let it become your signal to pause. Second, practice the sacred pause. It can be one breath, one beat. That brief interruption breaks the automatic loop. It gives your higher mind a chance to step in before your wounded parts take the wheel. Third, decide your values in advance. If you know you value kindness, respect, courage, then you don't need to invent your response in the moment. You already know the tone, the energy, the outcome you want to aim for. Your values become your script. And finally, detach from outcome. You're not responding to win. You're responding to stay aligned, to protect your peace, to reflect your character. Sometimes people won't appreciate it. Sometimes they'll still project it. That's not your concern. You are responsible for your side of the street. This trait makes you magnetic because it makes you safe. Not boring, safe, emotionally safe, energetically reliable. People want to be around someone who can hold tension without cracking, who can disagree without disrespect, who can feel fire inside and still choose grace. It's not always easy. There will be moments you fail. That's human. But the more you choose response over reaction, the more others begin to trust your presence. And more importantly, you begin to trust yourself. Now take a moment. Where in your life are you most reactive? What situations still pull you out of alignment? If you're ready to reclaim your power, write this in the comments. I will pause. I will choose. I will respond. Let it become your inner code. Let it change how you speak, how you love, how you lead. Conclusion: you are already becoming magnetic. If you've made it this far through all 10 of these traits, through these quiet philosophical battlefields, then hear this clearly. You are already becoming magnetic, not because you've mastered every principle, but because you care enough to reflect on them. That care, that effort, that willingness to evolve, that is rare, that is powerful, that is the beginning of presence. You now understand that magnetism isn't about charisma. It's about alignment. It's not about having the perfect words or the perfect look. It's about becoming someone whose energy speaks for them, someone whose actions, silences, and choices leave an imprint on others, not because you tried to impress, but because you lived in truth. Let's remember the journey we've taken. You learned how to command attention without forcing it, how to live by values, read the unsaid, ask with humility, listen with intention. You learned to move with time, to trade control for clarity, to regulate your emotional life with sovereignty, and to become a sanctuary in your own solitude. And finally, you learn to choose your response instead of being pulled into reaction. This is the path of the Stoic in the modern world. Quiet, firm, compassionate, disciplined. Not always understood by the masses, but deeply felt by those who know how to see. If this video brought you insight, reflection, or direction, I invite you now, subscribe to the Everlasting Stoic. Hit that like button. Let the algorithm know you are feeding your mind something different, something strong, something wise, something timeless. And before you go, tell me in the comments, which of the 10 traits resonated most with you? Which one are you ready to embody? Starting today, let's build a community of depth, not noise. A brotherhood and sisterhood of inner power. A space where silence, thought, and character are more valuable than spectacle. You don't need to chase attention. You are the gravity. Until next time, walk with calm, speak with care, lead with presence, and above all, stay stoic.